You open your investment app at 11:42 p.m. You haven't checked it in months, not because you forgot, but because you didn't want to be disappointed again. You tap the screen, the number loads. $3,842 to $3,917. That's it. 3 months, $75. You stare at the screen a little longer than you should. Because something does make sense. Everyone keeps saying the same thing. Just invest. Let compound interest do the work. It grows over time, but right now, it doesn't feel like growth. It feels like nothing, like you've been patient, disciplined, doing everything right, and getting almost nothing back. So a thought quietly shows up. Not dramatic, not loud, just enough to matter. What if this doesn't actually work? And that's the moment most people never talk about. Because compound interest doesn't fail loudly, it fails silently, right here, when it looks like it's doing absolutely nothing. My name is Leo, and if you've ever felt this way, you're not behind, you're not doing it wrong. You're just stuck in the part of compound interest that nobody explains. So what happens next? You don't panic, you don't make some dramatic decision, you just stop caring. You skip a contribution next month, then another. You tell yourself you'll get serious later, and that's how most people quit. Not with a big mistake, not with a market crash, but with a slow loss of belief, because the results didn't match the effort. Here's the core problem. You expected your money to grow in a straight line. Put in $100, see it become $110, then $120, then $130. Step by step, clear progress. Something your brain can recognize. But that's not how this works, not even close. Compound interest doesn't grow like a line. It grows like a curve, and the beginning of that curve, it's almost flat, so flat it feels broken. This is where most people get it wrong. They think, if it's working, I should see it. But compound interest doesn't show you anything early. Because early on, there's nothing to show. Your money isn't growing yet, it's preparing to grow. And psychologically, that's a problem, because humans are not built for this. We are wired for feedback. Fast feedback. You go to the gym, you expect to feel something. You work extra hours, you expect more pay. You study, you expect better results. Effort, reward. That's the pattern we trust. But investing breaks that pattern. You put in effort and nothing happens, at least nothing visible. So your brain starts asking questions. Is this worth it? Is there a better way? Should I be doing something else? Not because you're impatient, because the system feels unresponsive. But here's the truth, the part nobody explains clearly enough. Compound interest is not slow, it's delayed. It doesn't reward you early, it rewards you later. And if you don't understand that, you will walk away right before it starts working. Level 1, contribution phase. So let's slow this down, because what you're experiencing right now is not failure. It's a phase, the first phase, level 1, the contribution phase. This is where almost everyone begins. Years 0 to 5, and in this phase, you are the only engine. Every dollar in your account, you put it there. Not the market, not returns, not compound interest, just you, your time, your discipline, your decision to keep going. Let's make it real. You invest $300 a month. After 1 year, you have around $3,600, maybe a little more. Maybe $3,700 if the market helped a bit. But look closely, that extra $100, that's the growth everyone talks about. $100 on $3,600, it doesn't feel like investing, it feels like storing money slightly better. Now stretch it out, 3 years, you've put in over $10,000, your returns, maybe $800. $200 depending on the market, still small, still underwhelming, still not what you expected. And this is where the feeling creeps in. I've been doing this for years. Why does it still feel so slow? Because in this phase, your contributions are doing 90, sometimes 100% of the work, not your money. You. And that creates a strange psychological tension, because your effort feels very real. You said no to things. You saved when it wasn't convenient. You stayed consistent when it was boring. That part is clear. You feel it. But the results, they don't match that effort. They requiet, almost invisible, easy to dismiss. So your brain starts to disconnect the two. Effort over here, results somewhere far away, not connected. And once that connection breaks, motivation goes with it. That's why this is the highest dropout phase. Not because people are lazy, not because they don't care, but because it feels like nothing is happening. This is where people pause investing. This is where they wait for a better time. This is where they start chasing faster returns, riskier moves, anything that feels like progress. Because standing still feels worse than being wrong. But here's what's actually happening, even if you can see it. You're not just saving money. You're rebuilding the base that everything else depends on. Because compound interest has a requirement. It needs something to compound, and right now, you're recreating that something. Think of it like pushing a massive flywheel. At the beginning, it barely moves. You push and push and push, and it feels like all your effort is disappearing. But what you don't see is that every push is being stored. This phase is not about growth, it's about mass. Because later, that mass is what makes everything accelerate. But most people never reach that part. Because they stop here, right when effort feels the heaviest and results feel the weakest. Effort feels real. Results done T, and if you don't understand that, you'll walk away from the phase that matters the most. But if you don't stop, if you keep going through that first phase, through the boredom, the doubt, the silence, something starts to change slowly, almost quietly. Level 2, the momentum phase. This is usually somewhere around years 5 to 10, and this is the first time your money starts to move on its own. At first, it's subtle, easy to miss if you're not paying attention. You check your account one day, and the number is a little higher than you expected, not dramatically, but enough to make you pause. You put in $300 this month, but your account didn't just go up by $300, it went up by $380. That extra 80, that wasn't TU, and for the first time, you notice it. It's small, it won't change your life. It won't impress anyone, but it feels different, because now you're not the only one contributing anymore. Your money is starting to contribute alongside you. This is the moment everything begins to shift. Not financially, but psychologically, because for the first time, the system responds. You do something, and something happens back, and your brain catches it immediately. Okay, something is happening. You check your account a little more often now, not obsessively, but with curiosity instead of doubt. The numbers still aren't too big. Let's be clear, you're not seeing massive gains, you're not doubling your money overnight. But the pattern is changing. Before, growth felt forced, now it feels assisted, and that's a completely different experience. In this phase, your contributions still matter a lot. They still the majority of your progress, but they're no longer doing all the work. Returns start showing up more regularly, small percentages, applied to a slightly larger base, start creating noticeable movement. It's like the flywheel again, except now, when you push it, it actually moves, not fast, not dramatically, but enough that you feel the difference. And that feeling matters more than the numbers, because it restores belief. You stop asking, is this working? And start thinking, if I keep going, what happens next? But there is still a trap here, because the progress is real. But it's still fragile. Miss a few months, stop contributing, pull money out, and the momentum slows down again. This phase rewards consistency, but it still punishes interruptions. Most people don't quit here, but they get careless. They relax too early. They think the system will carry them now, not yet. You're not at the point where money does all the work. You're at the point where it finally helps. And that's the difference. This is the phase where belief returns, where patience starts to make sense, where the idea of compound interest stops being a concept and starts feeling real. It's not exciting, it's not dramatic, but it's the first sign of life, and if you protect it, if you keep feeding it, it leads to something most people never reach. The moment where your money doesn't just help you, it starts to outpace you. And if you stay consistent through that phase, if you don't interrupt it, if you don't get distracted, something much bigger starts to happen. Level 3, the acceleration phase. This is usually years 10 to 20. And this is where the entire experience changes. Because this is the point where your money starts working harder than you do. Up until now, you've been the primary driver. Even in the momentum phase, your contributions still mattered more. But here, that balance starts to flip. Let's make it simple. Imagine two people. One has $10,000 invested. The other has $100,000. The market goes up 10%. The first person makes $1,000. The second person makes $10,000. Same effort, same percentage, completely different outcome. That's the moment you begin to understand something important. It's not just the rate of return that matters. It's the size of the base. And now, your base is finally large enough to matter. You invest $500 this month, but your portfolio grows by $1,200. You didn't work extra hours for that. You didn't sacrifice anything new. That growth came from capital. And when that happens for the first time, it feels different. Not exciting in a flashy way, but quietly powerful. Because now the system is doing something you can do on your own. This is where returns become meaningful, not life-changing yet, but undeniable. You start noticing something strange. Some months, you contribute less than what your portfolio gains. That has never happened before. And it changes how you think. Before, you were saving money. Now, you're remanaging capital. That's the identity shift from saver to investor. A saver focuses on effort. How much can I put in? An investor focuses on structure. How is my money working? You start paying attention to allocation, to consistency, to staying in the system, not because someone told you to, because you've seen what happens when you do. And something else changes too, your emotional reaction to the market. In the early phases, a drop feels painful, because every dollar matters. But now, a drop doesn't feel like failure, it feels like movement. Because you understand something most people don't. If the system works over time, short-term changes are just noise. So when the market dips, you don't panic. You continue, because now you're replaying a different game. And this is where most people look at you differently. Because from the outside, it seems like you got lucky. Your money is growing fast, must be nice. But they didn't see the first 5 years, the flat line, the doubt, the invisible work. They re-seeing the acceleration without understanding what created it. And this is where compound interest starts to feel real, not theoretical, not delayed, real. Because now, for the first time, you can see a future where your money grows, even if you don't push as hard. But you're not done yet. Because there's one more shift coming, a bigger one. The moment where your money doesn't just work with you. It starts working without you. And if you keep going, if you don't interrupt the system you've built, there's a point where something almost unbelievable happens. Level 4, the autopilot phase. This is where the system takes over. You still contribute, you still invest. But your role, it starts to shrink, because now your annual returns begin to exceed what you put in. You invest $1,000 this month. Your portfolio moves by $3,000. You didn't do anything different. No extra effort, no extra discipline. The system just ran. And this is the moment where everything changes again. Not just financially, but mentally. Because for the first time, you realize something very simple. Your money is now the main driver, not your time, not your effort, your capital. And that realization is quiet, but powerful. You stop thinking in terms of saving. You stop asking, how much can I put in this month? Instead, your language changes, subtly, almost without you noticing. My portfolio grew this month. Not, I saved this month. That shift seems small, but it represents a completely different relationship with money. Before, growth depended on your behavior. Now, it depends on the system you built, and systems are more reliable than motivation. This is also where your emotions start to change. In the early stages, every decision felt heavy. Every purchase had tension. Every market drop felt personal, because everything depended on you. But now, that pressure starts to fade, not completely, but enough that you feel the difference. You check your account less often, not because you're avoiding it, but because you trust it. You don't need constant reassurance anymore. That anxiety you used to feel, it gets replaced with something else. Confidence, not overconfidence, not recklessness, just a quiet understanding. This works. And when you believe that, you behave differently. You stop chasing shortcuts. You stop reacting to noise. You stop trying to outsmart the system, because you don't need to. You've already built something that works without constant intervention. And that's the real power of this phase. Not just that your money grows, but that it grows without needing you all the time. You've moved from effort to leverage, from control to trust. But even here, there is still one more shift, because eventually, the growth doesn't just feel steady. It starts to feel disproportionate, like something is happening faster than it should. And that's when you enter the final phase. And then, if you stay long enough, you reach the part everyone talks about, but almost no one experiences. Level 5, the exponential phase. This is where everything feels like it happens all at once. Your portfolio doesn't just grow anymore. It jumps. Not every year, not in a straight line, but when it moves in ways that don't feel proportional to anything you did. You check your account after a few months, and it's up $40,000, or $80,000, or more. And the strange part is, you didn't change anything. Same contributions, same strategy, same behavior, but the outcome, completely different. This is where compound interest reveals what it actually is. Not slow, not steady, backloaded. Most of the results happen at the end. Think about it like this. For years, your portfolio was growing in thousands. Now it's moving in tens of thousands. Eventually, hundreds of thousands, not because the system changed, but because the base became massive. And once the base is large enough, even small percentages create huge numbers. This is the part that feels surreal, because it looks like acceleration came out of nowhere, like something suddenly clicked, like the system finally started working. But that's not what happened. It was always working, you just couldn't see it yet. This is where people say things like, wow, it must be nice. You got lucky. You found the right time, but you know the truth. There was no sudden breakthrough, no magic moment, just years of invisible progress, stacking quietly in the background. And now, it's visible. This phase feels different emotionally too, not exciting in the way people expect. It's quieter than that, because by the time you reach this level, you've already seen how the system works. You trust it. So when the numbers get large, you don't react the same way you would have before. You don't panic, you don't celebrate wildly, you observe, you adjust, you continue, because you understand something most people don't. These results didn't appear suddenly, they were delayed. Every small contribution, every boring month, every moment you thought this isn't working, it was all part of this. And this is the final realization, the one that changes everything. Compound interest didn't fail you in the beginning. It didn't ignore you, it didn't move slowly. You were just too early to see it. The results were never absent. They were waiting. So when you step back and look at all of this, it starts to become clear. Compound interest is not just a financial concept. It's a psychological test. Because technically, the math is simple: invest consistently, wait long enough, let it grow. But almost no one struggles with the math. They struggle with the waiting. Because this system doesn't reward you when you expect it to. It doesn't give you early wins. It doesn't validate your effort in real time. And that's what makes it so difficult. It quietly asks you a question most people can answer. Can you keep going when it feels like nothing is happening? Because that's exactly what it rewards. Patience, consistency, the ability to continue without visible results, and it punishes the opposite just as quietly. Impatience, doubt, stopping too early, not with a dramatic loss, but with something worse, missed compounding. You don't see what you lost. You just never experience what could have happened. That's why this feels unfair sometimes. Because the people who succeed don't necessarily look different in the beginning. They just stay longer. Think of it like planting a tree. The first few years, nothing impressive happens. You water it. You take care of it. You wait. Above the ground, it barely grows. But below the surface, the roots are spreading. Wider, deeper, stronger. You can see any of it, and that's the part most people don't trust. Because from the outside, it looks like nothing is happening, so they stop watering it. They walk away. They assume it doesn't work. But the people who understand the process, they keep going, and one day, the growth above the ground finally matches what was happening below it all along. That's compound interest. The early years are not wasted. They are hidden, and once you understand that, everything changes. You stop looking for quick results. You stop judging progress too early. You stop expecting the system to prove itself immediately. Because now you know the truth. You can skip the invisible phase. It's not optional. It's the price of everything that comes later. So what do you actually do with all of this? Because understanding it is one thing, living it is something else entirely. Here's what this looks like in real life. First, stop judging your progress too early. The first 3 to 5 years. They are not the result phase. They are the setup phase. If you measure success during that time by how much your money grows, you will always feel behind because you're remeasuring the wrong thing. In the beginning, your job is not to grow money. Your job is to build the habit of staying. That's it. Second, focus on consistency, not results. Because results will lie to you early on. They'll look small, insignificant, easy to dismiss. But consistency, that's the only variable you actually control. Not the market, not returns, not timing, just whether you continue. And that single behavior matters more than everything else combined. Third, start tracking the right numbers. Most people only look at their total balance, and that's a mistake. Because in the early phases, that number doesn't tell the full story. Instead, separate two things: how much you've contributed and how much your money has returned. At the beginning, contributions will dominate. That's normal. But over time, you will start to see the shift. Returns slowly catching up, then matching, then eventually surpassing. And when you see that transition happen, it reinforces everything. Because now you're rewatching the system come alive. Fourth, protect your time in the market. Not timing the market, time in the market. Because every time you stop, every time you pull money out, every time you reset the process, you're not just losing money, you're losing time. And time is the only thing compound interest needs. You can recover from a bad investment. You can recover from a market drop. But lost time, that does come back. And finally, make this one mental shift. Stop asking, is this working? And start asking, am I staying long enough for it to work? Because that's the real question. Not whether compound interest works, but whether you give it enough time to show you that it does. Fast forward a few years from now, it's late again. You open your investment app, almost out of habit. Not with anxiety, not with doubt, just curiosity. The number loads, and this time, you pause, because it's not what it used to be. The growth isn't $70 anymore. It's not even a few hundred, it's thousands, maybe tens of thousands. And for a moment, it doesn't feel real. You scroll back month by month, year by year, and you start to see it. The early years barely moved, flat, slow, almost invisible. Then something changed, not suddenly, not dramatically, but enough. The curve started bending, numbers started stacking, and somewhere along the way, it stopped feeling like effort and started feeling like momentum. And that's when the realization hits. Most of this didn't happen in the beginning, it happened later. All those months you thought nothing was working. All those times you questioned it. All those moments you almost stopped. That wasn't wasted time, that was the foundation. And now you can see it clearly. Compound interest was never slow, you were just early. Early to the phase where nothing shows. Early to the part nobody celebrates. Early to the work that most people walk away from. And that's why you're here now. Because you stayed, and in the end that was the only thing that ever mattered. The question was never if it works, but if you stay.